As humanity searched for a new home in the infinite darkness, they found themselves in the clutches of a ruthless enemy, the Xerian Empire. This alien regime ruled with oppression and tyranny across every corner of the galaxy, subjugating weaker races. Humans had been unable to withstand the advanced technology of the Xerions and were forced into slavery. Yet, despite all the despair, a spark continued to burn deep within the human spirit. Planet Carbonus 3 was the secret base of the resistance fighters who had managed to escape the strict control of the Xerian Empire. It was a dark, rocky place where even breathing was nearly impossible. But for the resistance, this was a sanctuary, a beacon of hope. The storms that swept across the planet were so dangerous that even the Xerions avoided them, making it the perfect place for secret operations. Carter stood at the heart of this base, intently studying the holographic map in his hand. The map showed the locations of the main Xerian strongholds. However, tracking their enemies' movements wasn't easy. The Xerions constantly relocated and fortified their defense lines. With a deep expression of thought on his face, Carter said, "This is going to be tough," to Azrael, who was standing beside him. Azrael was a tall, stern-looking man. There was a constant alertness and vigilance in his eyes, as if he was always ready for battle. "Tough," Azrael repeated, "but not impossible. The Xerions are strong, but they're not infallible. We just need to find their weak spots," he said. Carter was silent for a moment, then nodded. "Finding their weak spots won't be enough. When we face them, each of us must have one thing in mind. We must win this war," he said with determination. This war was going to be the greatest battle for humanity's freedom. Every resistance member gathered in the briefing room listened to Carter's words in silence. Seraphine, one of the youngest but brightest members of the group, had a sharp intellect that had saved the resistance on many occasions. "Carter is right," Seraphine said, "but we also need to be careful. The Xerions will try to anticipate our every move. We have to surprise them," she added. Looking into Seraphine's eyes, Carter said, "We will surprise them." Then he turned to everyone in the room. "Azrael, prepare the sabotage team. We're going to attack their communication systems. This will leave them vulnerable, even if only for a short time," he commanded. Azrael nodded and stood up. "Understood. The sabotage team is ready. We're equipped with the necessary explosives and devices. We'll infiltrate the enemy lines and get the job done," he replied.
Dorian, the group's intelligence expert, was silently observing the map. "If we're going to attack the main Xerian bases, we need more information. We need more resources to track their movements. I have a few contacts who could help with that," Dorian said with a slight smile. Carter looked at him gratefully. "Great. We need any information that buys us time," he replied. With a gleam in his eyes, Dorian said, "Information is power, Carter. We can strike them with their own weapons." A sense of mystery filled the room. Each of them knew how dangerous this war would be, but there was no turning back. This was humanity's struggle for existence. Carter took a deep breath and looked at his team one last time. "This mission isn't just a battle. This is the greatest sacrifice we will make to reclaim our freedom. No one will retreat," he said. "This is our last chance for freedom," Carter repeated, his voice trembling with emotion. Seraphine, with a look of encouragement, said, "We trust you, Carter. We're all in this fight together." Carter trusted his team. Each of them would play their role in this war, and victory would be in their hands. But every victory had a price, and they had to be ready to pay it. Night had fallen on the planet Carbonus 3. But this darkness was the perfect time for the rebels to act. Tomas Carter and his team had decided to send the sabotage team deep into enemy lines. This mission was designed to disrupt the enemy's communication systems and create the chaos needed for the rebellion's upcoming attack. Azrael, leading his team, was moving towards the Xerian Empire's communication tower. Fierce winds and dust storms battered the dark surface of Carbonus 3, but the rebels remained focused on their mission despite the harsh conditions. Azrael turned to his team and said, "Stay silent and stay alert. Zirian patrols are frequent in this area. We need to get in unnoticed." Corvus, one of the team's most experienced soldiers, moved to the front with his silenced weapon, scouting the path ahead. "I see 2 patrols ahead," he whispered. Azrael signaled Corvus, and the 2 patrol soldiers were silently neutralized with a single shot. As Azrael and his team got closer to the communication tower, the security measures around them intensified. Laser scanners and drones patrolled the tower's perimeter. Azrael paused for a moment and turned to his team. "We'll form cover here. Lyra, you can disable the laser scanners, right?" he asked. Lyra, the team's tech expert, pulled a device from her shoulder bag and quickly pressed a few buttons. "It'll take some time, but yes, I can disable the scanners," she said. The device connected to the scanner's frequency and caused them to short-circuit. As Azrael watched Lyra work, he waited impatiently. An attack could happen at any moment, enemy patrols could appear at any time. Lyra finally looked up and said, "All right, we can move in now." Azrael signaled his team to move forward. When they reached the tower's door, Corvus was seen placing explosives. "Explosives are ready. When I detonate, we need to move in quickly," he said. Azrael nodded. "Be ready," he said. Corvus triggered the explosives, and the door blew open with a loud noise. Smoke and dust filled the air, but Azrael and his team seized the chaos and stormed inside. The Zirian soldiers inside did not expect such a bold attack from the rebels. Vares, the team's sniper, quickly and lethally took down 2 more Zirian soldiers. "Keep going, we've got you covered," he said. As Azrael advanced with his team toward the main control room, he saw the Zirian symbols on the walls. These symbols were a reminder of their dominance in the galaxy. But today, that dominance would be shattered. When they reached the control room, Elias, the team's computer expert, immediately began accessing the system. His hands moved swiftly across the keyboard. "I'm about to bring down their communication network. Give me a few minutes," he said. As Azrael monitored their surroundings, he waited for Elias to finish his work. Just then, there was some commotion outside the tower. Azrael began to hear noises over the radio. "There's movement outside. We need to speed this up," he said. As Elias continued to work frantically, Azrael and his team took positions to defend the door. Within minutes, a smile appeared on Elias's face. "I did it. The Zirion's communication network is down. Now we need to get out of here," he said. Azrael quickly gathered his team. "We're leaving," he said. Just as they were heading to the door, explosions began outside. A Zirian patrol had noticed them and launched an attack. "Hurry! To the vehicles!" Azrael shouted, taking a defensive stance to protect his team. A flare lit up the dark sky, and the explosions shook the ground. As Azrael and his team tried to escape quickly, they came under enemy fire. Corvus made a final stand under heavy fire. "Go! I'll hold them off," he said resolutely. Azrael looked at Corvus for a moment, but didn't hesitate to signal the others. "Keep moving," he said. Corvus fired one last shot to cover his retreating comrades. The Zirian soldiers were taken aback by this brave resistance. The rebels reached their vehicles and quickly sped away from the base, while Corvus was left behind. As Azrael sat in the vehicle, he remembered Corvus's final look. In his eyes was the determination of a man ready to sacrifice everything for humanity's freedom. As the vehicle sped through the treacherous terrain of Carbonus 3, the echoes of the explosions faded behind them. Azrael reported the situation to Carter over the radio. "Mission accomplished. Communication networks are down, but we've suffered losses," he said. Carter took a deep breath. "We lost Corvus, didn't we?" he asked, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Yes," Azrael replied, his voice filled with an undeniable pain. "But we made it back. And this was our first step toward victory against the Zirions," he said. As the first light of dawn illuminated the dusty horizon of Carbonus 3, Tomas Carter and his team gathered in the underground base, the heart of the resistance. The sacrifice of Corvus had deeply affected everyone, but instead of deterring them, it had made them more determined. Carter stood in the middle of the room with a resolute expression on his face and turned to his team. "We will honor Corvus's memory. This war is not over, and his sacrifice will bring about the downfall of the Zirions," he said. Azrael lowered his dark gaze to the ground. "Losing Corvus was a big blow to all of us, but there is no turning back now. We've crippled the Empire's defense systems. Now it's time to bring them down completely," he said, his voice filled with determination and a thirst for revenge. Carter placed his hand on Azrael's shoulder. "This will be the final assault, Azrael. This will be the moment we reclaim our freedom," he said. Then, he turned to the team and shared the details of the operation. The plan for the massive assault on Krovix, the capital of the Zirian Empire, was explained in detail by Carter and Lyra. Krovix was where the Empire's strongest defenses and command centers were located. A victory here would resonate throughout the galaxy and declare humanity's triumph. Carter turned to Lyra. "We're counting on your skills, Lyra. You need to bypass the electronic defenses and infiltrate Krovix's internal systems. This mission is critical," he said. Lyra nodded firmly. "I'll do my best, Carter. But it's going to be harder than we thought," she replied. Carter's eyes swept over the other soldiers in the room. "Each of you has a role to play. We will strike fear into the heart of the Empire and tear them apart. Their communication networks are down, their defense systems are weak, but we are still facing a dangerous enemy. Stay alert at all times," he said. The resistance forces began moving quietly towards Krovix at dawn. Carter and his team crossed high mountainous regions and reached the outskirts of the city without being detected by enemy radar. Lyra, her hands trembling, pulled cables from an electronic box and connected to Krovix's defense systems. After a few minutes of intense work, she examined the data on the screen. "I did it. All the defense systems are under our control now," she said. Carter relayed the information to the other teams via radio. "All units, commence the assault," he commanded. Explosions and clashes erupted all over Krovix. The Resistance's preparations were bearing fruit. Chaos reigned in the city. Varys and Azrael were at the front lines of the street battles. The Zirian soldiers had not anticipated such a powerful attack from the Resistance. As Varys advanced under enemy fire, he took down the enemies one by one with his sharpshooting skills. "This is the fury of humanity," he shouted as he brought down another enemy soldier. When Carter and Lyra reached the city center, they were met with a surprise. The leader of the Empire, Tyrant Vexer, was waiting for Carter. "You finally came, Tomas Carter. I've been waiting for this moment," Vexer said with a mocking smile. A look of shock and anger crossed Carter's face. "Vexer, what are you doing here? Why didn't you flee?" he demanded. Vexer calmly clasped his hands behind his back. "Because this was a trap set just for you, Carter. Humanity may fight for its freedom, but in the end, we all share the same fate," he said. Lyra quickly pulled out her device to cut off Vexer's speech, but the device suddenly malfunctioned. "This is impossible. My devices aren't working," she exclaimed in panic. Vexer stepped closer to Carter. "All of this was planned, Carter. Enslaving you humans was easy because you cannot stand against not only our strength but also our intelligence," he said. Carter clenched his fists in anger. "Your plans cannot diminish Corvus's sacrifice. Humanity will be free, and tyrants like you will be destroyed," he replied. In the heart of Krovix, a fierce battle erupted between the Resistance fighters and the Zirian soldiers. Azrael and Varys fought against Tyrant Vexer's guards, while Lyra tried to repair her malfunctioning device. Everything was in chaos, but Carter never took his eyes off Vexer. Carter lunged at Vexer with an energy sword he had grabbed. The deadly duel between the two echoed through the city center. Vexer, a seasoned warrior, resisted Carter. "Do you think you can defeat me, Carter? You are just a human," he said. Carter attacked with all his strength and plunged his sword into Vexer's armor. "I may just be a human, but this is the power of humanity," he said, panting. Vexer's eyes widened, and he collapsed to the ground. The tyrant had been defeated. Vex's fall broke the morale of all the Zirian soldiers in Krovix. The Resistance fighters quickly took control of the city. However, this victory had come at a high price. As Carter stood wearily beside Bexar's corpse, Azrael approached him. "We did it, but this victory is bittersweet," Azrael said, sadness in his eyes. Carter took a deep breath. The sacrifices of Corvus, Lyra, and all the resistance fighters were for our freedom. Now humanity will rise again. The Xerian Empire is gone, but we will never forget the price we paid for our freedom, he said. As the city echoed with the cheers of the victorious resistance fighters, Carter and his team stood on the summit of Krovix. This was not just the end of a battle, but the beginning of a new era. Humanity had regained its freedom, but they knew how hard it would be to preserve it. I hope you had a good time. If you like my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye, see you in the next story.